The room glittered with chandeliers and clinking glasses, a polished hum of Lagos's Elite echoing beneath jazz melodies from the live band in the corner. Waiters in black and white weaved between elegantly dressed guests, pouring champagne and offering canapés too delicate to fill. Business cards swapped hands, jokes flowed easily, and deals were hinted at with raised brows and firm handshakes. At a central table near the stage, Jide sat with his signature self-assured grin, animated as he entertained two foreign investors and the managing director of a leading fintech firm. His voice carried, easy, polished, Americanized, everything carefully rehearsed. Beside him sat Elna, his wife of 6 years, her figure poised in a vibrant Ankara gown that clashed beautifully against the sea of sleek gowns and cocktail dresses around her. Her hair was braided simply, tucked into a low bun. She smiled when appropriate, nodded when spoken to, and kept mostly to herself, clutching the stem of her champagne flute with both hands. Someone, perhaps a little drunk or just bold, raised a playful suggestion. "Elna, you should do the toast. A woman's voice always sweetens the moment." The table laughed, lightly, casually, not unkindly. Elna's eyes widened briefly in surprise, lips parting slightly as she prepared to speak. But before she could form a word, Jide's laughter boomed louder than all others. "Ah, make una no try am. If Elna opens mouth now I is go to market, we go here." The laughter that followed was sharper this time, not cruel perhaps, but careless, thoughtless. Jide chuckled into his glass, wiping an imaginary tear from his eye. The man beside him chuckled awkwardly. One of the women at the table covered her mouth with a napkin, pretending it wasn't funny. Elna gave a small smile, practiced, tight, the kind of smile a person learns when they are often the butt of the joke and never the one telling it. She lowered her gaze, eyes heavy with something unsaid, and focused on the delicate bubbles rising in her glass. The sound around her dimmed, muted beneath the roar of her own heartbeat. Heat crawled up her neck, her ears. She felt small in that moment, smaller than she had in a long time. Still smiling faintly, she lifted her glass slowly, as if to participate in the toast anyway. But no words came. She didn't need them. Her silence was louder, and for a brief, fleeting second, someone at the table really looked, and blinked. 15 years ago, Marie Thompson had her own corner office in a high-rise downtown, a title with the word director in it, and a glowing performance review from a Fortune 500 company. She was 30 years old, sharp, creative, the one who could pitch a brand campaign with 0 notes and still leave room for laughter. Her colleagues called her the closer. If a deal was dying, they sent Marie in to resurrect it. But then, Brianna was born, and Troy, ambitious, charming Troy, had just been offered a promotion across the country. They'd sat in their tiny condo living room with takeout boxes on their laps when he'd said, "Babe, this could be huge for us. For Brianna, just for a few years. You'll find something there too." She didn't find something there. Not work, at least. 1 year turned into 2, then 5, then 10. Resume gaps grew into canyons. Every time she sent one out, there was silence. On the rare occasions someone called back, it was to say, "Your experience is impressive, but outdated." One interviewer had asked, chuckling, "So how comfortable are you with modern platforms like TikTok or Discord?" She'd gone home and Googled both, trying not to cry in the car. Meanwhile, Troy's career soared. He made senior executive by 40. "We did it," he told her. "Couldn't have done it without you holding down the fort." He'd meant it kindly. But the "we" slowly disappeared. Somewhere along the way, he stopped asking how her day was, stopped thanking her for the little things, started arriving home with half a bottle of bourbon in him, and comments like, "You wouldn't understand, you don't work anymore," or "Try dealing with real stress." Brianna used to adore her. They'd bake together, do science kits, spend rainy Sundays watching documentaries under a blanket fort. But around 13, something shifted. The sarcasm started, the eye rolls, the mimicry of Troy's tone, his condescension. Marie began to feel like a background prop in her daughter's life, necessary, but not appreciated, and certainly not respected. That was when she found the forum. It started with a Reddit post about weaponized incompetence in marriages. She commented, got upvotes, Someone messaged her, said she was articulate and should write more. So she did. Posts turned to essays. Essays turned to stories. She opened a Medium account, but under a pseudonym, M.L. Dane. The name was her own secret. Dane was her grandmother's maiden name, a woman who'd raised 6 kids and died with barely a sentence on her headstone. Marie promised herself she'd be remembered for more. The writing exploded faster than she expected. Her essay, The Price of a Silent Wife, went viral, shared by therapists, quoted by life coaches, even read aloud in a viral TikTok by a trauma recovery influencer. No one knew it was Marie. She never used photos. Her pen name became a voice for thousands. She moderated forums for women in emotionally abusive marriages. She read every DM, every story, some too painful to forget. She started taking online certification courses in trauma writing and digital publishing. She taught herself SEO. She ghostwrote copy for feminist mental health pages under strict NDAS. Every cent went into a separate bank account. In total, she'd made just under $9,000 in a year. Not much, but it was hers. She kept it all hidden. Troy would scoff. Brianna would mock her. And besides, she liked the silence of secrecy. It gave her space to grow in peace, something she hadn't had in years. Her days weren't lazy. They were full. She woke before everyone, wrote before breakfast, read articles while folding laundry, took notes during webinars with her earbuds in while stirring soup. No one noticed. At night, while they slept, she edited. She answered emails from readers in Chile, Kenya, Canada, women whispering thank you through glowing screens. Once, she overheard Brianna repeating a quote from that Dane woman in a mocking voice on the phone with a friend. "My marriage didn't kill me, but it made sure I never felt alive again." They laughed. Marie had smiled, just faintly. They didn't know the woman behind those words was the same one folding their towels and refilling the orange juice. The more they dismissed her, the more she wrote, and the better it got. Her last essay, The Emotional Minimum Wage, was picked up by an online magazine and cited in a psychology podcast episode. She still remembered the day she heard her own sentence, spoken by a stranger on the internet. Some women don't leave. They vanish while standing in place. Marie had paused, hand hovering over the keyboard, and whispered to the screen, "But I'm coming back." It was a Tuesday, just past noon, when the email came in. The house was quiet, Brianna at school, Troy at work. Marie sat in her usual spot in the guest room, her laptop balanced on a pillow on her lap, her second cup of lukewarm tea forgotten on the windowsill. She was halfway through moderating a forum thread when her inbox pinged, subject, publication proposal, urgent response requested. She clicked it, expecting spam, but it wasn't. The email was from Hayden and Sloan Publishing, one of the big 5. A senior acquisitions editor, Maya Chen, wrote that they'd been following M.L. Dane's essays for months. The tone was personal, even reverent. She said the essays had sparked real conversations in editorial meetings, that her work felt like a movement, not just content. They wanted to buy the rights to her top 10 essays for a printed and digital anthology. The offer, $95,000 advance, plus royalties, full creative input, potential for international rights. Attached were sample contract terms, subject to negotiation. Marie blinked at the screen, read it again, then a third time, slower. She felt like she might throw up. Her hand trembled as she reached for her tea, then set it back down untouched. She couldn't even react. Her mind jumped straight to what this meant, not just financially, not just professionally, but what it would mean, what Troy would say, what Brianna would sneer, what they'd do if they found out the person they'd mocked, insulted, rolled their eyes at, was suddenly being courted by publishing elites. She didn't reply, not yet. Instead, she moved the email into a secret folder she'd titled Household Administration. Then she closed the laptop gently, like it was made of glass, and went downstairs to start dinner. That night, she made grilled salmon with dill rice, something she hadn't cooked in months. She even added lemon slices to the water glasses. A small, irrational part of her thought, maybe tonight they'll see me. They didn't. Brianna was on her phone the moment she walked in. Troy poured himself a drink before saying hello. They sat, ate. The clink of silverware filled the air. Then Brianna snorted, mid-bite. God, someone reposted that bitter M.L. Dane chick on TikTok again. She's seriously obsessed with her own pain. Like, get over it already. Marie paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. Brianna went on. She said, "What was it? Some days I disappear so quietly, not even the dinner plate notices. Like, wow, try real life, lady. Try midterms. Try getting into college," Troy chuckled. Typical feminist nonsense. Whining in long paragraphs about how hard it is to load a dishwasher. Marie slowly lowered her fork. Her knuckles were white around the handle. Neither of them looked at her. The candle on the table flickered. Her salmon was getting cold. She said nothing, just kept chewing, swallowing, nodding where necessary. Inside, something cracked, quietly. Not the kind of break you could hear, the kind that made room for something else. After dinner, they both left their plates for her to clear. As usual, she did. Later, when the house fell quiet and the soft hum of Troy's snores filled the bedroom, Marie sat back in the guest room and opened the email again. This time, she read every line carefully, studied the contract, looked up Maya Chen on LinkedIn, watched a YouTube interview with her. Marie's face, reflected in the laptop screen, looked older than she remembered, but her eyes were sharp, awake. She opened a new document. Reply, Hayden and Sloane, offer, and began to type. The contest was held in a sunlit outdoor courtyard behind a local cafe with folding tables draped in red and white checkered cloths. The air was thick with the smell of garlic, pepper, smoke, and nerves. Camille arrived early, carrying her gumbo and biscuits in foil-wrapped trays, her heart thumping against her ribs. She didn't know what to expect. Most of the other contestants were loud, confident, and dressed like they'd walked out of a cooking show. Camille wore a plain white blouse and her late mother's apron, faded, worn, and stained with memory. She cooked in silence, letting her hands do what her heart had rehearsed 1,000 times. By the time the judges tasted her dish, Camille had retreated to the side of the courtyard, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. When they announced her name for second place, a surprised gasp left her lips. People clapped, strangers smiled. Someone in the audience shouted, "That gumbo had me levitating." She smiled, shy and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. What she didn't expect was what came next. A food blogger captured a slow-motion video of a judge taking a bite of her gumbo and then closing his eyes in pure bliss. That one clip, just 15 seconds, was posted online the next morning and exploded overnight. Thousands of shares, comments like, "This woman is magic," and "Taste the culture." Then came the repost. Chef Darnell Wallace, the world-renowned Southern cuisine expert, shared the clip on his page with the caption, "Who is this woman? Flavor like this doesn't lie. I need to meet her." Camille was in her kitchen folding laundry when her phone nearly exploded with notifications. Miss Edna came rushing in from next door, phone in hand. "Girl, you're famous. Darnell Wallace? That man fed the Obamas." A day later, an invitation landed in Camille's inbox, a VIP invitation to cook at one of Chef Darnell's pop-up tasting events in Atlanta. All expenses paid, an honor few home cooks ever received. She stared at the screen, mouth open. Her fingers trembled as she tapped to read it again. When she told Aaron over dinner, he didn't smile. He didn't congratulate her. He frowned. "So, now you want to be some Instagram celebrity?" "It's just a pop-up," she said carefully. "It's one night. Why are you trying so hard to prove something? What happened to just being normal?" Camille's throat tightened. "I've been normal, Aaron. I've been invisible. I just want to do something that makes me feel like me," he scoffed. "So you want to embarrass me and my mother in front of the whole city?" She pushed her chair back. "I never needed your mother's approval. I needed your support." He stood up too, voice sharper now. "You think cooking gumbo makes you a star? This is ridiculous, Camille. You're not a chef. You're a housewife with too much time." Those words stung worse than Sharon's, because they came from the one person she thought still believed in her. That night, Camille didn't sleep. Instead, she opened an Instagram account under the name @QueenOfFlavor and began posting her recipes, small videos, handwritten notes, stories from her mother's stall. Within a week, she had 5,000 followers. Within 2, she had 10. People weren't just following, they were listening. They were tagging their own versions of her dishes, using her spice blend ideas, asking for more. Then came the offer from a local food truck co-op, a shared kitchen space, a spot in the city's weekend market, and a chance to turn her growing platform into something real. She brought the pamphlet home to Aaron. He didn't even read it, just tossed it back on the table. "Camille, What's next? You going to quit cleaning the house and hire an assistant? Don't forget who pays the bills. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a man so worried about appearances he couldn't recognize joy when it danced in front of him. Word got around to Sharon and Grace, of course. They came over unannounced one Saturday, sat on Camille's couch, and tore into her like it was tradition. A food truck? Grace said, laughing. What is this? A midlife crisis? Sharon added, Camille, come on. These people online, they'll forget you by next month. Stop embarrassing yourself. Camille didn't respond. She just stood there, arms crossed, staring at the two women who had never once lifted her up. That night, she cried. She cried until the pillow was soaked and her chest ached. She cried for every dream she buried, for every meal eaten in silence, for every smile she faked at that dinner table. The next morning, Miss Edna came over with a plate of biscuits and sat beside her on the porch. You okay, baby? Camille shook her head. Miss Edna patted her knee. Let me ask you something. How long you been feeding these people? Your husband, his mama, his sister, seasoning up their lives, their egos, their peace. Camille wiped her eyes. Miss Edna leaned closer. The door slammed open just after 3:30, rattling the hallway mirror. Dad! Brianna shouted, dumping her backpack by the shoe rack. That M.L. Dane woman is trending again. She said something about marriage being a polite hostage situation, and now everyone's quoting her on TikTok. Troy was in the living room, nursing a scotch and flipping through the news on his tablet. He didn't look up. That bitter woman with the voice distorter. She's a damn virus. Brianna flopped onto the couch beside him and pulled up the video. Listen to this one. This went up like 3 hours ago. She pressed play. The now familiar distorted voice came through the phone speaker. Calm, steady, unapologetic. Being a wife in some homes is just unpaid public relations. Smile for the guests, apologize when he's rude, clean up the messes, and disappear when he's tired. Brianna laughed, amused but slightly unsettled. People are calling her the ghostwriter of women's pain. Like, what does that even mean? Troy rolled his eyes. What man would marry that kind of woman? All that complaining, probably single and miserable. Marie stood by the kitchen entrance, drying her hands on a dish towel, face unreadable. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stood there, watching the two people she lived with discuss her like she was a stranger on the internet. Neither of them looked her way. She turned and went upstairs. 4 days later, the leak happened. Marie didn't know exactly who did it. A former editor? A freelancer with access to internal comms? All she knew was that she woke up to 53 unread emails and her phone vibrating like it was possessed. The subject lines were all variations of the same bombshell. Marie Thompson is M.L. Dane, exclusive confirmed. Real face behind viral feminist writer revealed. Suburban mom exposed as internet icon. Her Medium page flooded with traffic. Comments multiplied by the thousands. Her inbox was a war zone of support, confusion, admiration, and threats. By noon, the story had been picked up by BuzzFeed, The Cut, and NBC Online. Her old co-workers from the agency she'd left 15 years ago were quoted. We always knew she had a voice. She just never got to use it. An old college professor emailed her a single line. You did it. You became unforgettable. She didn't check her social media. She didn't need to. Troy got home before Brianna. His face was red, jaw clenched so tight she could see the veins in his neck. What the hell is this? He held up his phone like it was a murder weapon. You're M.L. Dane? You've been lying to me, embarrassing me, mocking me in public under a fake name. Marie was sitting calmly at the kitchen table, flipping through a stack of printed copies of her essays. She looked up slowly. I never used your name, never referenced our address, never called you out directly. Troy slammed his glass onto the table. But everyone knows. You humiliated me. Do you know how many of my co-workers read this crap? I've been getting texts all morning, jokes, quotes. They're laughing at me, Marie. They're not laughing at you, she said. They're listening to me. He paced like a caged animal, then turned suddenly. That's it. I want a divorce. And I'm taking everything. The house, the accounts. Brianna. Marie stood, calmly, almost too calmly. From the drawer beneath the microwave, she pulled out a folder. Black leather, crisp corners. She laid it on the table and flipped it open. This is the prenup you made me sign, remember? Troy sneered. Yeah, and? I had it amended 3 years ago through a lawyer, she said. Right after I found those text messages between you and your intern, Lisa. Her eyes didn't blink. You never responded to the legal notice, so the amended version became binding after 90 days. He froze. She tapped the top page. Clause 14. Infidelity forfeits. Claims to spousal property. Clause 18. Assets earned outside of joint income remain individual. Clause 22. She paused, smiling just slightly. Public defamation attempts void custody leverage. Troy's mouth opened and closed like a man's swallowing glass. You get nothing, Marie said. Not the house, not my earnings, not my name. His voice cracked. You planned this. You manipulated. I survived, she said, quietly, thoroughly. Just then, Brianna walked in. Her eyes were already wide, phone in hand. Mom, this article? This is you. She sounded horrified. Marie turned to her. Yes. You, how could you? People at school are talking about it. Marie didn't respond right away. She watched her daughter, watched the layers of shock and confusion and recognition move across her face like weather. Troy made a strangled sound and left the room. A door slammed upstairs. Marie exhaled slowly, then walked over to the kitchen sink. She picked up a sponge, rinsed a plate, scrubbed gently. Brianna stood frozen. Marie spoke quietly, not turning around. This is what I was D. The apartment was small, just one bedroom, one bathroom, and a kitchen with counters the width of her old cutting board. But it was hers. No one rolled their eyes when she bought a vase of fresh sunflowers. No one complained that the walls were too white or the soap too floral. She slept with the window open and wrote in her pajamas at noon if she felt like it. The furniture was minimal, a second-hand couch, a table from a discount store, and a shelf that held exactly 6 hardcovers and 1 ceramic mug she refused to use because it reminded her of peace. Light poured in through the windows every morning like a promise. The air smelled like lemon and ink. She had moved out quietly, as always. A polite farewell, a list of bills settled, a key returned with no fanfare. Troy hadn't fought her, not after the prenup hit. He stopped calling altogether. Marie was relieved. Brianna hadn't visited in 3 weeks, until the knock came. Marie opened the door to find her daughter standing there, hood up, eyes red. Can I come in? Brianna asked, her voice barely more than breath. Marie nodded and stepped aside. Brianna looked around the apartment like she was inside a stranger's memory. She didn't sit, just stood in the middle of the rug, twisting her fingers. I read all of it, she said. Every essay, every word, even the old ones. Marie leaned against the counter, arms folded. She didn't reply. I was awful to you, Brianna whispered. I thought you were nothing, just there, like air. I didn't even see you. Her voice cracked. But you were doing so much, and I mocked you. I was so cruel. A silence hung between them. I'm sorry, Mom. I was wrong. Marie inhaled slowly. The hurt was still there, raw and trembling beneath the surface. But she saw something in Brianna's face she hadn't seen in years. Humility, not fear, not shame, just truth. She turned, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. Do you want tea? She asked. Brianna nodded, wiping her face. The conference was held in a converted theatre downtown. 200 women packed into folding chairs, some taking notes, others holding hands. Marie stood behind the podium, wearing a simple black dress and the same small gold hoops her mother used to wear. There was no voice distortion, no shadow. The spotlight hit her like heat, but she didn't flinch. My name, she said, is Marie Thompson. I used to be a woman who made herself small so others could feel large. I was told I was lazy while I held the whole house together. I gave up my voice to feed theirs. She paused, looked around. But I was never lazy. I was just invisible to the people I loved. The room was still, silent. Then the first clap came, then another, then all of them, rising to their feet like a wave of thunder. Marie stood there, not smiling, not crying, just breathing, fully, completely, seen. The city outside her window was quiet, softened by the hush of midnight, and a sky just shy of rain. The apartment was dim, except for the warm spill of a single lamp beside the couch. Marie sat cross-legged on the floor, in an oversized sweater, her fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Chamomile. Always chamomile. She sipped slowly, the steam curling up against her cheeks. The silence was no longer lonely. It was hers. Her laptop chimed softly from the table. She leaned over, set the mug down, and tapped the trackpad. Subject: NYT bestseller. Congratulations. Her eyes moved slowly over the words. rereading the same sentence again and again. Your book, The Emotional Minimum Wage, has debuted at number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list for non-fiction. Marie exhaled, not loudly, not triumphantly, just a slow, private release, like the sigh of something long-caged finally stepping outside. She closed the laptop gently. Across the room, next to her modest desk, hung a small whiteboard. On it, written in neat blue marker from weeks ago, were reminders and grocery lists. She uncapped the pen, wiped it clean. Then, slowly, she wrote, "Seen, heard, free." She stepped back, let the words settle. Outside, a streetlight flickered. Inside, Marie took one last sip of tea and stood in the glow of her own life, unapologetic, unhidden, fade to black. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.